Many of you are likely aware that discussions surrounding Larian and their use of AI has gone nuclear. They're experiencing a ton of backlash and a huge amount of revolt from folks who hate the very idea of AI. And I'm here to present to you what's going on with the situation and what arguments look like online, on social media, and just in the gaming landscape. Now, let's start with why people hate AI. And it's, quite a few factors. And you've got folks like Nick Tech here highlighting how AI has ruined memory prices, with memory prices jacking up because of the fact that a lot of AI companies have hoarded all of the RAM, and it's forcing a lot of the major RAM manufacturers or companies who partake in, creating RAM, GPUs, and components that use that kind of memory to focus more on AI because that's a more lucrative business venture. Nick Tech talks about how AI has ruined game optimization due to relying more on fake frames and AI upscaling solution rather than optimizing first. How it's ruined social media since half the content is now AI slop. How, fake movies and game leaks are created now, and how that is disruptive to essentially how information is distributed online and how a lot of misinformation can become commonplace. How AI wrongfully flags content creators for spam and delete their channels, referring to recent YouTube controversies on that front. How AI has made every app have some useless AI slapped onto it, or operating systems and the like. And then beyond that, there's just things like environmental impact, how this has been damaging to the environment, how this destructive technology is stealing jobs, pushing propaganda, hiking prices, jeopardizing our own health and safety even, which is why the conversation surrounding AI has turned so sour and why so many people are against the current usage of this technology, with a lot of companies using it very irresponsibly or for their own gains, rather than, uses that are genuinely ethical feeling or uses that feel genuinely beneficial to society. And so now let's talk about Larian and the situation that they find themselves in. All this started with Larian CEO Sven Vincke's interview with Bloomberg, talking about the upcoming Divinity game that was recently revealed at the Game Awards, but was also asked questions about the development process. And what Bloomberg learned is that under Vincke, Larian has been pushing hard on generative AI, although the CEO says the technology hasn't led to big gains in efficiency. He says there won't be any AI-generated content in Divinity. He says everything is human actors. We're writing everything ourselves. But the creators often use AI tools to explore ideas, flesh out PowerPoint presentations, develop concept art, and write placeholder text. It reads right here, use of generative AI has led to some pushback at Larian. So within the studio, some folks do not like the idea of using Gen AI, but quote, I think at this point, everyone at the company is more or less okay with the way we're using it. Now, it's worth noting that this isn't the first time that Larian has admitted to using machine learning in some way, shape, or form. So, for example, back in April 25th, 2025, there's this article where Sven Vincke said that the company uses machine learning to do tasks that nobody wants to do, is how he put it, as you can read right here. He said it's the obvious things like a motion capture cleaning or voice editing or something very specific, retargeting. So that is basically if you play with different species, you want to be able to reuse an animation on a different species that are in different size, and then they're doing certain interactions with others. So there are these very specific uses that he mentioned back then that are more about reducing the tedium rather than, replacing artists and replacing developers and workers and employees. But with his most recent statement on AI, Sven Vincke talked about how AI tools are used to explore ideas and develop concept art even. And the general backlash out there is that concept art is, essentially the basis of any project. That, in many ways, defines the creative direction of a game, the visual language, so on and so forth. So to have that relegated to AI, people feel essentially kind of poisons the pool. Not to mention that the creation of concept art is a whole profession within itself that feels like could be at risk if this is something that is pursued. Now, Sven Vincke and Larian did respond to all of these accusations, and I'll get to that in a bit. But the general reception of what Bloomberg revealed through this interview with Sven Vincke has not ultimately gone down well, with a lot of people feeling as though, for the sake of convenience, Larian is sacrificing some aspects of artistic integrity. Now, while we're on the topic of convenience, there's nothing like having really well-designed travel gear for your travels. Which brings us to the sponsor of today's video, Bellroy, makers of high-quality and thoughtfully made travel accessories. What I've got for you right here are two of their flagship products, their Transit Carry-On Luggage Bag, as well as their Transit Travel Pack Pro Backpack. The carry-on comes in 4 color varieties, with mine being this nice shade of green called Everglade. It is perfectly sized for airline compliance domestically here in the US. It's got removable cells that can serve as dividers for better organization, and it's got tons of compartments to store all kinds of things for travel. The custom-designed telescopic handle is also really comfortable to deploy and hold. Its Hinamoto Lysoft Silent Run wheels ensure a very smooth and quiet roll, and the matte polycarbonate shell is strong, flexible, and highly durable. As for the backpack, it's incredibly versatile with its ability to expand from a volume of 30 liters for a more everyday backpack experience to 38 liters for traveling, with suitcase-style full zip access that makes it really convenient for high-volume packing. There are tons of compartments and pockets in here as well to ensure that everything you bring with you has somewhere to go in, including a discreet RFID-protected pocket for sensitive items like passports and the like. The materials are top-notch and premium as well, with a focus on both durability and comfort, as well as being eco-friendly through recyclable materials. These are just 2 of the myriad products that Bellroy has on offer, and all of them are crafted with this high level of consideration and attention to detail. If you're in need of bags and accessories for travel and organization, Bellroy has got you covered. And you can get 10% off your order by using my link in the description and comment section below. All right, so let's talk about the backlash surrounding Larian and what that has looked like. So right here we have Kami, for example, tweeting about this Bloomberg report, how for Divinity, Larian will be relying on some aspects of AI in order to flesh out PowerPoint presentations, develop concept art, explore ideas, and write placeholder text, so on and so forth. You can see right here, just from the fact that this has garnered almost 12 million views and, tens of thousands of likes and tons of interactions with tons of comments and people expressing their opinions, that this is a hotly debated topic. Even in the comment section of this particular post, people are talking about how, there goes my interest for Divinity because AI is being used to develop concept art, this being one of the top posts. Or, folks posting stuff like, Larian, I was so excited for this game, but if you're willing to undercut concept artists and can't even think about the foundations of your game without using a slot machine to make it so you don't actually have to think or be creative, I'm not paying you a single cent. And a lot of comments echo this sentiment, both here in this thread, as well as if you look at the quote tweets for Kami's posts, you have tons of posts going viral, like this one right here. The Divinity hype was so short-lived, it felt exactly like this GIF, showing a very brief moment of hype before dying of disappointment. And stuff like this is garnering tens of thousands of likes and millions of views, and people talking about how this may very well kill hype for Divinity and how Larian kind of essentially paved the road for that with their insistence on using Gen AI, even if it is for more conceptual stuff. Tons and tons of viral tweets, all of them in extreme dissent against this idea that developers are normalizing using Gen AI for things that artists could do and likely do better. Just searching for AI on Twitter, you'll find that scrolling down, a lot of this stuff is related to recent rumblings surrounding games that have used AI during its development, and Larian in particular has become a major topic of discussion and contention. I mean, you've even got folks like Sam Dietz talking about how if you're using generative AI for concept art, then yes, you did use AI-generated content in your game. What the hell makes you think visual artists don't deserve the same respect as actors and writers? Sam Dietz being the head behind the Castlevania animated series, and he's an animator who is very passionate about this kind of topic. Larian in the past has expressed that they are not about AI kind of being prominently used in game development. Right here, for example, we have an associate producer at Larian talking about how, with Jennifer English, who won Best Performance at the Game Awards, here's what the producer had to say on that front. We lose the chance to support performers like Jennifer English if we let Gen AI replace human acting. Every VA starts small and progressively levels up to take on bigger challenges. When we let AI do the unimportant lines, BS, by the way, people with potential never get to shine. And what a lot of people are arguing is that the same could apply to artists who, maybe start out with smaller projects and, smaller assignments when it comes to like concept arting and stuff like that, and can progressively level up and take on bigger challenges. But if, generative AI replaces that particular profession and that entry-level aspect that artists, have contributed so much to, then what chance is there for new artists to come in and prove their potential in order to be able to kind of get in on the ground floor of this industry and be able to rise through the ranks? Similarly to, what Burnhen is saying here about voice actors. And so yeah, the backlash has been swift and severe. You've got folks like Brian Francis, who is a games journalist, just saying sigh in response to Sven Vincke talking about how they plan to use Gen AI for some of the more conceptual stuff, which is gaining traction on Blue Sky. And also on Blue Sky, you will see developers speaking out, like former Larian Studios developers such as Anoxicart, who said, "Consider my feedback. I loved working at Larian Studios until AI. We consider and change your direction like yesterday. Show your employees some respect. They are world-class and do not need AI assistants to come up with amazing ideas." Here's another developer posting on Twitter saying, "LOL, as someone who's worked there for 4 years, I'm not surprised." This former developer then criticizes the way Sven Vincke said that everyone at the company is more or less okay with the way we're using it, insisting and accusing him of lying about people being okay with it, and kind of going off about how wrong this all feels and how this is something that Larry needs to change. Others are bringing up the point that the concept phase is the absolute worst time to be using generative AI because the concept phase is the foundation from which everything else is built. With this individual saying you're poisoning your creation at the root, you're immediately limiting your vision. Why on earth would you ever do that? There's a post that has gone viral. You've got other ones like this, how people are talking about the way Larian is, so quickly destroying their reputation, saying one of the smartest things you can do as CEO is mess with the established winning formula that helped your last game sell 20 million copies. Stuff like this is going viral. You've got posts like this saying how to lose me as a consumer 101. That's also garnering tons of likes and views and many people being in agreement. Lots of folks expressing their disappointment, so on and so forth. Folks highlighting how seeing the company who won the best community support award at the Game Awards actually lose the community support in one afternoon is bizarre, bruh. Here's the former Larian developer chiming in further saying, "Stop with this bullshit argument that AI is inevitable. It's not. We have heard the same shit about never-ending wars and everyone getting COVID. All of these things are preventable, not inevitable. People complying in advance is fucking us over. Stop shilling for billionaires." Plenty of folks saying that if you are someone who relies on AI, then you're kind of a loser or, you lack creativity. Posts like these also going incredibly viral. Some people expressing bafflement at how Larian has set themselves up to losing a lot of goodwill. So, for example, Rafa Knight here highlights how they spent millions on a CGI trailer on marketing and, to get their AD on the Game Awards, and then they go and talk about the usage of Gen AI and lose all the good reputation they've built and how that's negatively impacted PR to the point where they have to engage in damage control, asking, what is this business strategy called? Also going viral. Then you've got folks who are speaking up for concept artists because a lot of people believe that, well, it's just concept art, right? As long as the final game doesn't have generative AI stuff in it. We've got folks insisting that concept art is an incredibly fun and creative step in game development. The entire game grows from the creative vision of the concept artist because, again, concept art is in many ways the foundation of so much, especially when it comes to like artistic direction or visual language. AI generative software wouldn't be able to output images that mimic concept art if that software wasn't engineered by exploiting the work of thousands of concept artists without permission or compensation. Using AI generative software is just wanting to exploit the labor of concept artists without credit, permission, or payment. So F these guys. We got folks like this individual right here praying for the downfall of AI so that all those who invested in it experience a similar downfall. And, this is, again, garnering tens of thousands of likes and hundreds of thousands of views. Posts like these are going viral. I have a wonderful generative tool. It's called My Brain. That's a post that's garnered quite the popularity with, almost 150,000 likes and almost 1 million views. And this conversation is so widespread that it's caused individuals to look at other games that are being highly celebrated but still use generative AI, like Expedition 33 here, when, they once upon a time freely admitted that they used some AI, but still ended up winning the most awards ever in Game Awards history. With Gene Park here highlighting this particular quote from Clay Obscure developers. "We use some AI, but not much," says Francois Maurice, producer of Clay Obscure. "The key is that we were very clear about what we wanted to do and what to invest in. And of course, technology has allowed us to do things that were unthinkable a short time ago. Unreal Engine 5's tools and assets have been very important in improving the graphics, gameplay, and cinematics." Gene Park's point being that, AI is kind of everywhere now, and it is something that has been kind of normalized, and it's something that can win awards. But, a lot of people didn't really even know that Expedition 33 used, even if it's a little AI, that they used it at all. And plenty of people are asking, like, what was the exact usage of AI? And, can we determine whether it was ethical or not? Gene Park's intention was also to highlight that because massively critically acclaimed projects like Clair Obscure can be seen both admitting to using AI while also garnering all this love from the community and also winning awards. Gene correctly points out, according to this user, that whether you think Gen AI is good or bad, this emboldens people to use AI in their workflows. It's concerning that Valve requires devs to disclose their use of AI on their store pages, and the most critically acclaimed game of the year didn't do so. And the quote tweets of Gene Park's post here, plenty of people expressing their dissent and also highlighting how there were actually certain AI placeholders that did ship with Clear Obscure, and they only removed it after people pointed it out and noticed that it was Gen AI. Some people are highlighting how Dispatch, based on what they said previously, didn't use AI and went as far as to say that maybe AI is a creative solution if you aren't a creative person. That's a direct quote from Dispatch developers. But at the same time, Expedition 33 director Guillaume Broche has come out and said their firm stance on AI is no, or specifically, creative AI, saying, quote, the studio doesn't want AI involved in anything creative and isn't interested in anything made by artificial intelligence. But I don't know if the general consensus is that using AI for a lot of conceptual stuff, creating mood boards and the like, as long as that stuff doesn't ship in the final version of the game and it's just strictly for conceptualizing, that's okay. And that's what Expedition 33's director meant by, no to creative AI and no to shipping things that have AI assets, but still using it in some ways as a tool, especially for the conceptual stages. But a lot of people are arguing that even in the conceptual stages, AI should not come into play. And so this discussion exploded with people highlighting how both Larian Studios and Expedition 33 developers admitting to using Gen AI wasn't on their bingo card, and how that is so incredibly disappointing given how beloved both of these studios are and how they've presented themselves as folks who want to do things more ethically and artistically, just with a moral compass, highlighting how this technology, even if it's just used for conceptual stages, ultimately contributes to harming the environment, how it replaces jobs and steals art from people, so on and so forth. And this topic blew up so fast and became just so fiery that Sven Vincke actually decided to respond, and he did so via two outlets. He provided a statement to IGN, and then he went on his own personal Twitter account to issue his own statement. So here's the statement that was provided to IGN. Quote, we have been continuously increasing our pool of concept artists, writers, and storytellers, are actively putting together writer rooms, casting and recording performances from actors, and hiring translators. Since concept art is being called out explicitly, we have 23 concept artists and have job openings for more. These artists are creating concept art day in, day out for ideation and production use. Everything we do is incremental and aimed at having people spend more time creating. Any machine learning tool used well is additive to a creative team or individual's workflow, not a replacement for their skill or craft. We're researching and understanding the cutting edge of machine learning as a tool set for creatives to use and see how it can make their day-to-day lives easier, which will let us make better games. We are neither releasing a game with any AI components, nor are we looking at trimming down teams to replace them with AI. While I understand it's a subject that invokes a lot of emotion, it's something we're constantly discussing internally through the lens of making everyone's working day better, not worse. So Sven Vincke's insistence is we're not trying to replace artists, but just, give them additional tools that will allow their workflow to be more agile, to be faster, and will make things a little more convenient for the folks who have been hired as concept artists and other professions where generative AI might smoothen certain processes out, is how Sven Vincke is framing it. And then we have the second statement from Sven Vincke, and this one really didn't do him any favors because of the way he started with, holy fuck, guys, we're not pushing hard for or replacing concept artists with AI. The tone basically implies, hey guys, you guys are getting mad over nothing, what the hell? And that is something that has not gone down well. But Sven Vincke continues, we have a team of 72 artists, of which 23 are concept artists, and we're hiring more. The art they create is original, and I'm very proud of what they do. I was asked explicitly about concept art and use of Gen AI. I answered that we use it to explore things. I didn't say we use it to develop concept art. The artists do that, and they're indeed world-class artists. We use AI tools to explore references, just like we use Google and art books. At the very early ideation stages, we use it as a rough outline for composition, which we replace with original concept art. There is no comparison. I talked about how we use machine learning here if you would like to know more. Referencing that GameSpot article we took a look at earlier in the video, we've hired creatives for their talent, not for their ability to do what a machine suggests, but they can experiment with these tools to make their lives easier. That is Sven Vincke's insistence. It's not about replacing artists, it's about making the lives of developers and artists easier through how AI can be used for certain inconvenient processes to be made more convenient. But the counter argument to that from people is like, at what cost do you want to make things more convenient when the technology itself is, harmful to the environment, and its normalization is harmful to art, and it's harmful to employees, given that a lot of corporations, even if there's some folks who have good intent with the usage of AI, there are a lot of folks who want to use AI as a means to essentially embolden their riches, to line their pockets further, and to cut costs, and to not have to use humans in order to develop products, to replace artists with automation that imitates humanity rather than something that can genuinely be human, which is a vital aspect of art. Art is just inherently human. It's not some technical product. I mean, there's a lot of technical things involved with the development of a video game, but it's art. And art ultimately has to come from somewhere real, with real experiences, with unique experiences from each individual. And AI is just an amalgam of things rather than a unique entity of its own. And so yeah, Sven Vincke's tweet is something that has gone viral, garnering almost 9 million views and over 50,000 likes. But the responses are pretty scathing, with one of the top comments here with almost 30,000 likes saying, if you're using AI to generate ideas to explore, that is using AI in your game. This is duplicitous spin to say otherwise. The entire history of creative industry happened just fine without using AI. There's no need to shoot your game in the foot by using it now. Here's another top comment with over 18,000 likes, insisting that all and any use of generative AI for artistic ventures is repulsive to consumers and bad for artists and creatives. Any company that embraces Gen AI practices loses my support immediately. And that's been a very widespread sentiment across social media. And then PR surrounding all this was made even worse by the director of publishing here, quote tweeting Sven Vincke and saying that feeling when you announce a game in 2025, posting this image suggesting that it's a very harsh environment to announce a game in this year. And a lot of people felt as though this was a deflection of criticism rather than them genuinely listening and trying to, at the very least, have a proper discussion. And that goes doubly true because once upon a time, this same individual tweeted how, quote, the worst person you've ever met, here's how AI could improve this. And it suddenly feels like Larian is doing a 180 on that stance, where they're like, well, some uses of AI are okay, when once upon a time, they were completely admonishing the usage of AI and insisting that AI can never improve an artistic endeavor. And so somebody here called out the director of publishing at Larian out on that, saying, okay, can you guys not squander your goodwill by being flippant about your parents' 180 on this issue? And then there were plenty of discussions surrounding the way Sven Vincke opened his statement that he published on Twitter. Folks saying things like, I don't know, holy fuck, guys, doesn't seem like a polite way to address your understandably angry and concerned player base. Somebody else here, Paul Tassi, a journalist, came out with, all the best damage control starts with holy fuck, guys. Yeah, that really did not do Sven Vincke any favor. It's important when a technology like this is presenting such understandable concerns to, at the very least, explain professionally instead of trying to be confrontational when those concerns are so valid. People asking what's going on with Larian's PR team, if they're on vacation. Apparently, at one point, Sven Vincke, in response to the backlash, removed his header image and changed his icon, his avatar, to essentially this sad puppy, and that's something that also didn't go down well, with this individual criticizing this by saying, did I just watch this guy remove his header, change his icon, and remove his bio the way people do on Discord when they're upset? People calling that move, a childish way to react to a very reasonable backlash when you and other big Larian accounts have been making fun of people who use AI for months just to admit into using it. Folks also quote tweeting Sven Vincke and highlighting how, devs take an anti-AI stance up until it feels like they can see some benefit from this technology. He says AI, it's the same as using Google or books. Then why not just use that? What's the point of hiring artists if you're going to force them to use AI for art anyway? Is something that has also garnered a lot of support. And then here's somebody who came out with this really kind of insightful way of looking at things, talked about why AI can poison the pool, even if that technology is used for very conceptual things, how that technology, when it replaces real artists, can ultimately lead to essentially like a self-contained bubble where everyone is essentially extrapolating from the same kind of slop that at the conceptual stages might potentially impact and trickle down to everything else moving forward. So Jade Law here says, so here's my 2 cents. I've said before that people need to get off of Pinterest and ArtStation when collecting reference. So many games look generic because concept art has become self-referencing and inbred. I always advocate for finding your own primary reference. And with AI being an amalgam of what's already out there, what you are creating from AI, using AI for conceptual stuff, might not end up being very unique. It might just end up looking like everything else because AI can't think of unique things. It can only generate amalgams of things that already exist. So back to AI, says this individual. I hate seeing AI in mood boards. It's of no value to me. There's no culture, no consideration, no material reference. If I go to a museum, I see objects that expand my understanding of human creativity and production. AI can't even get wood knurling right. Concept artists get shit for looking at other artists, but when we do that, we can understand the other artists and their work. There's a story behind that craft. You can see the individual ingredients and adopt only what we need. With AI, we only see mush. When referencing other art, you're not just referencing just the strict visual imagery, you're also referencing the intent behind that art. And, that comes from somewhere real. It wasn't this amalgam of artistic mush that was generated by a machine that doesn't really understand what it is to express humanly. This individual continues, as an extreme example, I design guns. AI does not understand how guns work, how they're machined. The details are lost. What it provides is nothing I can learn more about. To someone who knows nothing about guns, you might be fooled enough into believe it's correct. Your knowledge is now tainted because you've come to rely so much on AI. The way I view AI is almost like the difference between like going to a library and actually doing your own research by reading the individual books written by a human being versus having an individual at the library who says, I've read every single book in this library and I can answer all your questions, and just relying that this person who's read all the books will give you all the accurate details and is able to fully represent the intent of the original writer of whatever it is you're researching. But ultimately, what AI is doing is just paraphrasing, really, whereas the actual original source material is giving you the full picture, which is why this individual insists that it's a poor facsimile and it's disappointing to see AI being used this way. I actually think using it to render concept is more acceptable than this, as at least the important part, the idea, is human, whereas rendering could just also be done with photo bashing or whatever. Either way, Larian communicated this poorly. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, you've got folks saying that this whole conversation is being overblown and that Larian's usage of Gen AI is not as bad as people make it out to be. So we have this individual right here saying, I'm a concept artist. The AI hate directed at Larian is 100% ignorant and bad faith virtue signaling. Artists are not against AI usage as a tool. We're against Gen AI that was trained on real artworks and mass-produced slops that imitated our hard work and then marketed it as our replacement. In pre-production, the art team would grab random pics off the internet and other games to create a general mood board for aesthetics and vibe that fit the art direction. There are more nuances in this. I'm describing this in the most simplified way possible. A mood board of a character may include several pictures of other video games or anime shows, dozens of objects with texture references for parts of their attire, multiple reference pictures of relevant objects such as animals or historical weapons, or even other character artwork made for other games, all of which are randomly drawn from the internet and put together for the purpose of creating an overall aesthetic for a design that will become original in its own way, inspired by its reference and the artist's own creativity and originality to visualize it when they create the design by doing art. Larian Studios mentioned using AI to streamline this process and actively menial labor of looking for relevant and cool pics on the internet. In essence, there's zero reason why AI speeding up this process is a bad thing. It is essentially the same as someone asking Grok for facts they could have spent a few hours reading through Wikipedia pages. But the counter argument to that is that AI doesn't always relay information correctly. In fact, AI is known to not do its job well. It is known to, when it comes to like searching for facts, to often give information that is woefully incorrect. And so the argument is that with art and concept art in particular, the slop that is produced from that could be potentially detrimental to the creative process in the same way that AI has been detrimental to, ensuring that information is accurate. This continues. None of the pictures grabbed by either the AI or the art team in this process are being exploited for any monetary gain, since they're simply inspiration and visual direction. This has been standard practice in the industry for decades. And that's true. Mood boards and concept art and, when things are pitched before production, the general process is to get images and videos from other sources and put them together to present like a general idea, but then from that, extrapolate from it and create unique art that, takes inspiration from the amalgam of these things, but isn't the actual thing. And, all the kind of work taken from other sources, that stuff's eventually thrown away in favor of the original art that was inspired by, all these other artistic research elements that were put in there for the mood board and concept art. But there are plenty of questions about whether using AI at all is ethical, given the harm that it has done across so many different facets, whether it's the environment, whether it's, employees and artists, and the way its normalization has led to the technological exploitation of it. Others are talking about how this AI hysteria is similar to when new technologies came into play that has put other people out of work. Like, when cars came into play, the horse breeding industry suddenly became a lot less prominent. Or, when you've got situations like how in the 19th century, the steam engines were introduced, how that created mass hysteria. But the thing is, with every new technology, it is worth having questions. It is worth scrutinizing what are the consequences of this kind of technology. And with AI in particular being as powerful as it is, and with how quickly and easily it can steal other people's work, with how easily it can destroy environments, with how easily it can pave the road to exploitation on the part of corporations, it is worth asking these questions. The hysteria is worth it so we can eventually reach conclusions where we can set boundaries on how AI should or shouldn't be used. And so much of the discussion surrounding AI isn't just about technological advancement, it's about art, which is such a human part of just society, of this species, us as humans. It's about the degradation of a core facet of humanity, artistic expression, and the way, AI is becoming so prominent that it intends to take over that and just dish out slop and mush and content that is devoid of any of that human expression that is at the center of art. And now the current fear is that with how much backlash AI is receiving, that companies will be less inclined to reveal that Gen AI was used at all, that they may keep that secret. Richard Hoek, for example, here highlighted how the end result of this backlash is not the end of generative AI, it is the end of the remotest transparency about how Gen AI is used, because the general consensus is that AI is such a prominent part of modern day that it feels like an inevitable technology, that it's here to stay. But others are saying that if you stigmatize a technology enough, then it's something that a lot of companies won't want to pursue. Like with NFTs, for example, that was, the big talk. Celebrities were endorsing that shit. But then people were so fed up with what a scam this thing was and how useless it was, how environmentally harmful it was, and how it, led to a lot of people being hurt financially, especially by all of this, that it eventually faded away as companies realized that it was a PR liability to engage with NFTs. Maybe something similar can happen with certain types of uses of AI. I do think AI as a technology is here to stay, but it's a matter of what kinds of usage we allow to stay and what kinds of usage we should admonish at all costs so that the technology can be used responsibly. So that ultimately it doesn't lead to the complete degradation of art, which is where we're starting to head towards. And then there are fears surrounding how AI access currently is, cheap and free even, but how, the goal might be for us to become so dependent on AI usage that eventually corporations will be able to charge us and we will be forced to pay these corporations because AI access becomes such an instrumental part of, human society. If that's where we're headed, then that's, rather dystopian. And the encouragement of using AI is just kind of the normalization of that, which is something that a lot of people don't want to see. The technology is not the issue. It's its usage. It's the way it is used and exploited, especially by powerful entities who, want it all, right? Who are not about making our lives better. It is about forcing something down our throats so that they can, in some way, shape, or form, milk us dry. But yeah, this has been such a widespread discussion. There are multiple perspectives on this. And this is the kind of discussion that needs to happen when powerful new technology like AI is introduced. So at the very least, I'm glad that scrutiny is happening. That's how we determine what boundaries we draw, what lines we put down so that we know that this technology is used responsibly and regulations and laws are put in place so that, it is ensured that this technology is used responsibly rather than as a tool that ultimately enriches the rich further, that, makes the poor poorer, and that kills art, such an important facet to human existence. Is Larian's usage of AI the worst we've ever seen? No, but is it still worth scrutinizing how that technology is being used? They're not full-on replacing voice actors with AI voices like Arc Raiders did or like the Finals did. But there are a lot of artists who are speaking out, concept artists in particular, who are expressing their concerns about the normalization of this particular way of using this technology, where, it starts off, a little bit here and there, and then suddenly, when people accept it, it becomes a lot more prominent. And the goal is to stop this technology in its tracks, at least the exploitative use of this technology in its tracks, before that exploitative use is further normalized and we see companies push the boundaries of how they use this technology further. But yeah, it's a fascinating discussion. And given how from my perspective, AI has done more harm than good. The fact that people are so keyed into this topic, the fact that these kinds of discussions are happening to such a large extent, and the fact that it's not just something people are too tired to talk about, that it's something they're ignoring or something they're letting companies do whatever they want with. The fact that scrutiny is happening is really encouraging, because it means that the world is paying attention, and that means the world can decide what are acceptable uses of AI and what are not acceptable uses of AI. And at the end of the day, the people have the power. If we're all in agreement universally enough, then companies will be forced to follow the whims of the consumers and of the customers, the communities, the players, because we're the ones who ultimately give these companies the money for them to be able to do what it is they want to do. And if there's enough backlash, enough dissent against the particular use of a technology, then, if it affects their bottom line, companies will cave. And so I'll be very curious to see where this discussion heads next. If it's something that ultimately people forget and Divinity ends up selling millions of copies, if Larian will change their stance on AI, if this is just a temporary backlash, or if it's something that persists enough that it will change the methodologies of companies who will want to steer clear of AI usage as to avoid this kind of scrutiny and backlash and PR nightmare that they'd have to deal with. But I'd love to hear what your perspective is on all of this. Stances surrounding this topic very widely. And I'd like to ask you if you think Larian's way of using Gen AI for the more conceptual stuff, if you think that's okay and justified, or if you're in agreement with a lot of the backlash saying that even that stuff is harmful to artists, and if it's ultimately something that is more detrimental than beneficial, and if the backlash is justified. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.